Sticker off.
Hello, everybody. I did record this, so we're now recording. Yay!
Yay!
We have what's looking like a full house here. And what's really cool is we have a lot of people with various backgrounds participating. So today, Dr. Krull and I are talking about Break the Stigma. And I'm just going to turn it over to her for a quick introduction, and then we'll just go down our what we call loose agenda.
Perfect. Hey guys, thanks for joining me. I'm Dr. Becky Krull. I live in Green Bay, Wisconsin. I'm a small animal veterinarian and business owner. I definitely found my place in that all too common phrase of burnout and compassion fatigue not too long ago. And I like to say that basically I work in the trenches with everybody. I live in the trenches. So I'm still living, veterinary medicine, but I've found a way to crawl out of mental health and share my story while building my team and building my business. And I'm just super passionate, one, about veterinary medicine, two, about making sure everybody else is still passionate about veterinary medicine, and then sharing my story so that it's not so scary to talk about the stuff that's happening to us, and an opening up dialogue and being really, transparent and vulnerable to have those tough discussions. And Rebecca's just been like super gracious enough to include me in this. And I love talking to people and I love connecting. So thank you.
Well, we are so happy that you are vulnerable and ready to express and share. And I'm sure there's other people on this presentation as well that, we've all had tough times. Gosh, when I look back at my life, I call them the tsunamis, right? That's when we have those life-changing personal and professional growth. We don't have personal and professional growth when we have the peachy keen days. It's during those tsunamis.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm Rebecca Rose. I'm a certified veterinary technician, and you will notice that neither Dr. Krull or I are licensed in therapy whatsoever, but there are other people on this program even that are. But we're here just to help share our stories and bring this to light and have these open conversations to allow other people to feel more comfortable with it too. Comfortable within their veterinary teams, comfortable within having conversations during their team meetings, creating employee benefit programs and all of that. So my first experience with the well-being scene within veterinary medicine goes back a ways, but in 2016, I believe, was the year that I was at the AVMA Wellbeing Summit in Fort Collins. And there was a woman there during the keynote presentation. She was a veterinarian, but also had a long list of other credentials. And she threw out the word destigmatization. The biggest word I had ever heard before and after, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, but it's right up there. Destigmatization. And even what do we do with it? And then Dr. Krull and actually her and I met during the 2019 summit. And if you recall, Becky, and Becky Murray was there too. They were talking about how do we destigmatize, and that was like one of the action items. And that's how I even came back to my veterinary teams living well and said, okay, guys, we're going to start working on destigmatization.
Yeah.
So tell me, Dr. Krull, what do you think is, the stigma or the destigmatization of this? How do we do this?
How do we do this? Yeah, well, it's things like this. We just start talking about it. It might be an uncomfortable situation, but like you said, I mean, we don't grow from living in our comfort zone, right? We only do better when we get uncomfortable. So for me, it's learning a lot about the brain, because that helps as a science person, and then sharing it with my staff. That's where we start. We start, right in our own backyard, and then in our staff, it's just a trickle down approach. We have actual coaches and psychotherapists on our team, and we'll get to that for employee benefits. But it's being vulnerable enough to share the story. We've all been there. And that's the thing. When you start having these conversations with people, you're like, oh, yeah, I felt that way. My own business partner, who I've worked with for 16 years, I never heard a word from him, about burnout and wanting to leave the profession and feeling down about things. And then I started to share my message, and he started hearing it. And he's like, oh, Becky, there are days I drive by the practice and I'd want to keep on driving. And he never shared that with me. And it would have been so helpful in
Mhm.
my mentoring time in my young years to know that it's okay to struggle, it's okay to feel this way, and here's some tools to get you out of it. So just saying it's okay to talk about it.
Mhm. Yeah. I can remember many years ago, probably in 2001, 2002, and the Steve Covey came out with 7 Habits of Highly Effective
Mm,
People, and we were starting to talk about burnout, right? So even
yep.
then, and I'd been working with my veterinarians already for 13 years, and so we were starting to have conversations about what does burnout look like, and why are they looking at different aspects of their life to find fulfillment, because they're frying
Hmm.
crisp within their jobs right now. Yeah. Um, and so we also came across some information too from just the idea of stigma. So stigma is placing a judgment on something without even really knowing or understanding what it is and feeling comfortable about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be the first one to admit, like when I was at my lowest of lows, and certainly had mental health issues that need to be dealt with, and probably depression. Placing those labels alone on it was hard for me. Like, how could I be a depressed person? And
Mhm.
then even words like therapy, life coach, I had problems with those because I knew people in my life who struggled and went to therapy and saw a psychologist, and there was a stigma attached with that because those people either didn't succeed or, they were labeled with problems. And that was hard for me to admit on myself. Was like, wow, I don't want that label. So taking away the label that we are not a disease, we are a person, and I am Becky. I am not a veterinarian. I am not depressed. But taking away those labels, and even for me, that was a struggle.
Yeah. And I remember last time you had mentioned too about how you thought, oh, that works. That I haven't seen that work for other people, so I'm not even going to
Right.
let that work.
Not even gonna try it.
Not even going
Yeah,
to.
I'm not gonna. Yeah, I'm not gonna try therapy. It didn't work for so and so. No, I'm not gonna try it. There's no hope. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the thing of it is too is if we compare ourselves to other people, we really don't know what that looked like. So
Exactly.
we
Yeah.
can only compare to what's going to work for us.
Yeah. What a disservice to myself by just saying that, and
Yeah.
not seeking the help. So
Yeah. Um, I'm going to allow Dr. Carey to jump in real fast. I'll give
yeah.
her an unmute. And I asked her in the chat if she wouldn't mind talking to us about destigmatization. Again, that's a big friggin' word. I think that's the one that we kind of need to attach to. So, Carrie, tell us a little bit about your background.
Hi guys, hopefully you can hear me well enough. I have laryngitis today. It will be gone by Saturday for my talk, I promise. But yes, I am a licensed clinical psychologist and have a private practice in Denver. Have been in the therapy field since 1994 and in private practice since about 2001. And stigmatization is actually a really important thing to think about and talk about, which is that we make negative assumptions before we actually have all of the information. And typically those negative assumptions are born out of fear because it's something that we don't know a lot about, or it's something that sounds sort of scary. And so instead of slowing down and figuring out the information, we just decide instead, like, no, oh no, that's not for me, or somehow that's bad, or not good for you. And one of the things that I would really encourage is to normalize. So I feel like one of the words that I really enjoy using is to normalize things like talking about mental health. And talking about mental health is not necessarily revealing every time you feel anxious. And it doesn't mean you have to be super vulnerable with everybody, but it's normalizing that taking care of what your mindset is and how it's helping you or harming you is really worth spending a little bit of time and energy on. And I think that that normalization is one of the first steps to destigmatizing, particularly getting mental health treatment.
Yeah. Thank you. And Dr. Carey will be presenting on Saturday, I think sometime, and she's talking about the flexibilities, being psychologically flexible.
The power of psychological flexibility. It's essentially how to build resilience in ways that are easy and very accessible. So I look forward to seeing anybody at 10:30 on Saturday morning.
Wonderful.
And I promise my voice will be back.
More lemon.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, Becky, Dr. Krull, because we've got two Beckys now, so I'm going to start differentiating. Let's talk about what is working for us within our community. Are there things that are working for us?
Yeah, I think that it's now become like the norm. You're seeing it in the literature. You're seeing it in everyday publications, so I mean, there isn't an email I don't get a day that's got something about well-being and workplace life balance, all that stuff. So I think we're just talking about it. So I think that's amazing. And then, you're holding symposiums like this that are easily accessible, affordable, and they have CE attached to them. So how many people, they don't want to participate if they have to pay an exorbitant cost and they're not getting credit for being there. So I think that's amazing. The AVMA has certainly recognized it and starting to put things out on their platform. And I just think this is something I use in my talk. I think of myself as ringworm. I'm just planting little fungus along the way, and eventually one's going to take and spread like wildfire. And I think that's what it takes. It's just each one of us sharing our story, sharing our message in an authentic way, whether that's with your staff or, going out on public stage is a whole other story, but just sharing it, being a mentor within your own practice and sharing your stories, I think is just invaluable.
Yeah. I remember during our last symposium, we started talking about the vulnerability piece. And I remember someone at the beginning said, "Oh yeah, I'm vulnerable," and I show it here. And by the end of our symposium, they were like, "Oh, I need to take it to that next level of vulnerability and the next level of that's a hard word sometimes, vulnerability." And knowing that when we do that and help to expose ourselves, not so much that way, but just that it helps everybody, that we are shining that light.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not so much of a I'm broken and I need to be fixed mentality. I think that's, that this is normal. This is normal to have these thoughts, these behaviors. Our brain is developed this way. It's not that you're broken at all.
No,
so knowing that you're not that way takes away that stigma.
Precisely. All right, so I'm going to invite the other Becky on here, Becky Murray, who is a veterinary technician with a very unique background, one of few that, although it is a growing more of you. All right, so two things, Becky. Tell us what you do within the veterinary field, and even as a veterinary technician, and then what do you see working within our communities?
Sure. So thank you. I work very seldom as a vet tech anymore. I do sometimes just help out, especially during the pandemic when it's been so insanely busy. But I work at a private practice. It's about 40 to 50 doctor practice with about 290 employees, and it's specialty and referral. So I'm available for clients, and then I'm available for employees. And what I do with employees is I, try to implement some wellness programs. I'm there for them for very, short sessions together. I help them find resources. No matter how much we talk about our EAP, nobody can seem to remember that we have one. So I'm constantly just reminding people of the resources we have. So, and then I've actually forgotten the second part of your question. So can you repeat it for me?
What is working in this idea of destigmatization or normalizing within our communities?
Yeah, so I think, we cannot stress enough that talking about it and like Dr. Krull said, just normalizing things. It's so very important. If somebody can hear somebody else, look, it's very isolating to be depressed. It's very isolating to have this crippling anxiety. It's isolating to, be happy in your job and then over years start to become miserable for one reason or another and not know what's happening. And so if you hear somebody else just reflect some of the thoughts that are racing around your head, it makes everything so much better. And so I think just talking about it, I know that I am very vulnerable with my staff. I, personally had a very traumatic childhood. So I will freely talk about that with people. And I know that it makes them more likely to talk to me then about things that are going on with them. And so I feel like we can't talk about it enough at the hospitals, while making sure that people understand that they don't have to disclose anything that they don't want to, but that they're welcome to, and there will be no judgment if it's up to.
Yeah. That's a big clinic, 290. Wow. So
And it's just me.
yeah. And I think, that it's fantastic that your big practice has that. But my concern too is of those little practices with 1, 2, 3 doctors as well. So it's, this obviously does not just stop at, this is only a big doctor practice issue. So Becky, thank you so much for sharing, and be sure to
You're
pop
welcome.
in if there's other things that you want to talk about as well. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So back to you, Dr. Krull. Let's talk about the fact that, this doesn't just like that gated community. This isn't just stop at a gated community. This goes in and impacts everybody, our receptionists, our technicians, veterinarians. I think that's one of the things as well that there's a lot of stuff working, but it impacts everybody on these teams, regardless of the size.
Yeah, I mean, it does. The 2018 CDC study was put out about suicide risk, and it focused on just veterinarians. But I think now there's even more studies coming out. It's our entire staff. And so, yes, it's great to focus on just a veterinarian, but our support team is struggling just as much as the veterinarian. I loved what Rebecca said. She's in a huge company, a huge business, but what about just the small mom and pops? What about those 1 to 3 doctors? And that's me. I mean, we're a 4-doctor practice right now, and we don't have those corporate benefits, and we don't have the big availability to, maybe utilize those tools. But that we should stop thinking that way, because there are tools, some of which are free and some of which are not. And in our own practice, I've finally said, enough, we're going to pay for it, and we are going to have mental health and well-being in the windshield, like looking forward. That's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to focus on for many reasons. But one I talk on all the time is happy people produce better. And as a business owner, the bottom line is important. And so I need happy, productive people working for me.
Happy, healthy, thing, right? The pillars. We're always, Jamie Davis and I are already always talking about our 8 pillars, right? So you've got mind, body, spirit, you've got your career, you've got the physical aspect of it, so that, it's not this wonky, flat tire trying to go through life. It's got a little bit more of a going to it, if you were to give a visual, I suppose.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Right? But we have to look at the holistic approach to us as a team, and that we do have different age groups on our teams that approach this differently, which is something that Mary Berg is going to talk to with Michelle, MKA, that different generations look at well-being differently. So let's talk more about that. Your veterinarian ahead of you said, no, I'm just going to plow through, and I'm not going to tell you how I felt. I'm just going to let you do it by yourself and figure it out yourself.
Yeah, I mean, his coping mechanism, well, number one, he's a male, so his coping mechanisms are going to be different than mine. A different generation, he didn't maybe talk about it. He might have self-medicated more than we should with that. So that's, addiction is a huge problem in our field. And then, yeah, man, our practice runs the gamut. He's 20 years older than me. There's me. My associates are 10 years younger than me. And then our, techs are 20 years younger than me. So there's this whole like sliding scale. And what I am finding, which I think is a good thing, but more and more associates coming out of school are understanding how important it is.
Yeah.
And they're demanding things, and good for them, because they're going to change. They're going to change the business. They're going to change the market. They're going to say, no, we're not going to work 60 hours a week. No, we're not going to not take our vacation and PTO. And no, I am going to have a lunch, and I am going to go to the bathroom when I have to go to the bathroom. Good for them. They need to start doing that. And we as business owners need to be listening.
Yeah. I'm going to talk about something I just read the other day, and maybe Dr. Carey and Becky Murray can jump in on this, or anybody else that might have some statistics on this too. But I was looking at how different generations looked at mental health, and actually how the younger generation is actually more prone to talk about it and be open to it. I do remember my mother had a plaque at our house. This was when I was much younger, even when we were living back in Michigan. And it talked about how the plaque says, I'm going to have a nervous breakdown. I worked for it. I deserve it. And I owe it to myself. And I'm just going to have a nervous breakdown, right? So is there can anybody else chime in to, how these other generations might be more open to it, normalizing it sooner within their lives?
I'd be happy to chime in. So in some ways, it's fantastic that the younger generation, particularly the teens and 20s, are much less destigmatized about it. Although it's kind of funny because it feels like we've taken the continuum from one end and now the other, and they're actually so destigmatized that it is now cool to be anxious. And they describe things such as that they're having a panic attack when really they're just having normal increase in discomfort. So it's been an interesting challenge in my practice to help without re-stigmatizing, helping these young folks understand that feeling uncomfortable is actually a reasonable and to be expected portion of the world. And it does not actually mean that there's something wrong with you. It does not mean that you should diagnose yourself or anyone else. And let's increase those resilience skills a little bit. So it's been kind of funny to watch the pendulum swing from one end to the other. And I'm like, come on, guys, let's get it into the middle here. So
I think there's a lot of things in our life that are going like that right now. Woo!
couple.
Goodness gracious. Mary, or Becky, do you have anything to add to that?
I do. It's something similar to what Dr. Carey was talking about, in that I feel like there's so much information about compassion fatigue and about vicarious trauma and burnout, and that it's become an easy thing for people to say that all of our problems are because of this workplace, right? Like, these veterinarians are all committing suicide because, they're all attempting suicide because, of the clients who are yelling at them on Yelp. And I feel like it's decreased some of my staff's personal responsibility for what's going on in their own life, right? Like, I don't have a problem with anxiety. I don't have a problem, with depression. I don't have a problem with communication. It's really because of this job. It's because of my employers. It's because of these clients who are, causing veterinary staff to attempt suicide. So I found that to be a really interesting thing that's kind of happening in the past few years that I've seen.
Well, I think there's always this opportunity for us to be more responsible for our own actions. And I think that comes with not everything, but I feel I'm more aware and self-aware at 55 than I was at 25. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with Becky though a little bit there of there's a bit of a victimville stance in the veterinary world, and treading on that lightly, because it can be difficult, that yes, we are experienced with imagine, real stresses, but pointing that finger back, always back at self, and having a different lens of perception, that the world perhaps is not attacking you and I'm not being chased by a tiger, but it is my own personal issues that are making that happen. I think that's a great point that you brought up though, Becky.
And can I actually say one more thing? I don't want to hijack this. Is that okay?
No,
Go for it.
So I'm too old to get involved in this. I just can't deal with research, but I would love to see some studies that are coming out about the incidence of mental health issues in people who are going into veterinary medicine. Because if we think about it, what is the most common thing you hear veterinary people say? They say, I went into vet med because I hate people, right? So that's not healthy, right? I mean, it's not healthy to hate people. Like, you might be shy or might be an introvert, but healthy people don't just hate other people. And so, why does that happen? There's a whole host of reasons why we don't trust other people, or we can't communicate with other people, and so, so I'd really be interested to see how much of what we think of with burnout and compassion fatigue is from the actual field, as it is from the volume of people who are coming into the field who don't know how to work with other people or talk to other people or trust other people. So I'd be interested what you guys think about that.
That's a conversation I frequently have with veterinary technicians and veterinary students. Both of them saying, how many of you, would prefer to be with your dog than with your team? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, well, guess what, guys? You're getting into a service-driven industry, and you do have a team, and you do have clients, and so a large percentage of your day is going to be spent educating, dealing with team members, communicating with team members, and all of that. Yeah, most definitely.
And building those skills for coping, resilience, and again, going back to that term normalizing, like normalizing some level of discomfort, normalizing conflict. Conflict doesn't mean that you're taking someone's head off. Conflict means, hey, I think we should do this with this dog, but this doctor thinks we should do this with this dog. How do we work through and figure out what the best course of action is? So kind of renegotiating some of those things away from being such a constant threat, and really helping people have a little bit more agency and trust both in themselves and in their ability to navigate with other humans. So
all of that.
Yeah.
There's a comment in the side, and this person just saying that it took me a while to realize, I was part of that problem. I did have to look at things from, it's not just that they don't like me. There was this other layer, and it was not just a personality difference, but that there's this opportunity for professional and personal growth at that time too. We lose a lot of veterinary technicians. It's at about the 5-year mark. I just was on a thread with another social site. But veterinarians do stay in it longer. They've just got more debt, and they're in it for the long haul, where our veterinary technicians are churn and burn, our receptionists are churn and burn. So that's one of the reasons why we create this as well, a symposium, to keep us healthier, happier, longer within veterinary hospitals and within our veterinary community. Okay, so we've talked about the destigmatization, kind of what does that look like as a big word, and how normalizing is where we want to go. Jamie Davis, I'm gonna kind of bring you into this conversation, and then Dr. Krull, I'm gonna come back to you, and we're gonna start talking about what's not working and resources. So Jamie, tell me more from your experience as a practice manager, this idea of normalizing this. What did that look like within your practice?
I think the big thing within our practice is that we stopped not talking about it, because there was too many times where we were avoiding it, or trying to, just avoiding conversations about mental illness. and mental wellness. And when we started to talk about it in team meetings and sharing experiences, especially from the top level down. When we started to make it a safe place to talk about these types of challenges that we were facing, both personally and professionally, because as much as we like to say, leave your stuff at the door, that's pretty unrealistic because we are whole beings. We can't just leave part of ourselves at the door when we come to work. Those things stay with us. So once we started to really have conversations as a team and show some vulnerability, like I said, especially from that leadership perspective of talking about a hard situation and kind of that Me Too movement for, that was for other things that were happening, we kind of grasped onto that idea of sharing experiences with mental health in our practice instead, and just having those conversations, whether it be at a team meeting or whether it be at a rounds in the morning, just kind of touching base with each other and feeling okay to ask somebody else how they're doing and just to sit there, shut up and listen. And when we started to really listen to one another, I think is when we really um, just move to the next level of having it be accepted. And I will definitely say from my experience that the younger generation of technicians and veterinarians are way better at this than us veterans, because they are able to talk about it more freely. It's when I have a 20 something, well, not even, goodness, she was like in her teens, saying that she needed to take a mental health day. Part of me was like, you are like 18, like why would you need a mental health day? You have no idea what stress is. And then when I stepped back for a second and thought, wow, to be 18 and be able to say, I am overwhelmed, because she was a technician student and she was like, I am overwhelmed. I need this mental break for myself. And to see the acceptance that happened from the team at that time as well, to say, yes, we're down a team member, she's taking a mental health day. Everybody was like, got it. And we pull together and we move on. And then when they start to see that level of acceptance, then when they need a mental health day, they can say, hey, I need a mental health day, or even just to say, I'm having a hard day today. And having that freedom is just incredibly beneficial when the team can have that team bonding experience over the fact that we all struggle. We might struggle with different things, but we all struggle. And to be able to share that with one another and lift each other up and support each other when we're struggling, I think it just makes for a work culture that is something that people want to be a part of, especially those that are younger coming into this field. I had a veterinarian who said multiple times during team meetings that and she wasn't, I think she was like 5 years in. So she was right at that, that hard line, right? That some of us draw and say, yeah, this isn't for me after 5 years. But she was very open with the fact that this was the first facility she had been a part of that was so accepting and so openly talked about mental health and the importance of self-care and being able to be open and vulnerable with each other. And that was part of the reason why she joined our team, because we were so accepting of it.
Wonderful. Yeah. Good thing to have a vision and values all together. So Dr. Krull, I'm going to bring it back to you. All right.
It's getting dark here. I'm sorry. I'm fading away here in the car.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the things that are working, and tell us how, your EAPs and your team meetings, tell us how you did that.
Yeah. So the things that are working is One, always focusing on being the best leader I can be so that I can lead my team. So if we've got leaders who aren't doing a great job leading, nobody's going to follow them. So doing the hard work myself. And then we have implemented all sorts of things for, wellness and mindfulness. So sneaking things in without calling it mental health. Every Friday we take 2 hours. It's paid time. So that I'm so passionate about this that I pay my people to participate. I don't force them, but if they want to join us, they're getting paid to do it. So we have a winning wellness group. Again, we have our executive life coach and her husband, who's a psychotherapist, on our team, available to us really 24/7. Then we implement monthly CE basically with them. So lots of learning about the brain, lots of learning about why we behave the way we behave, and just having the language. One of our staff members, when she gets irritable, we didn't understand why. Turns out she was just hungry. If you feed the girl, she's totally fine. So now we're able to have that conversation of like, yeah, Megan, are you hungry right now? And she's like, oh yeah, I probably should have a snack. But being able to have, like Jamie was saying, those open dialogues to understand why people behave the way they do, or, if somebody walks in and bringing bad energy, it probably has nothing to do with you. It has something that happened at home, and honoring that and being able to have an open conversation of, hey, are you okay? Do you need to step out for a minute? Do you need a mental health day? And just, yeah, being there as a team has worked for us very, very well.
And Becky, how long did it take for you to make that shift?
Yeah, that shift. Well, it's not overnight, because first of all, I always say I was a toxic leader, and I had to understand that was my fault. So it took me about a year to go through my process, and my staff watching from the sidelines, and then slowly trickling things in. And I would say the last 6 months we have hit our stride, where they
during a global pandemic.
During a pandemic, thank God, because if we didn't have these gifts during this pandemic, I don't know what we would do. But everybody has just embraced it now and understands it. And when you start working on yourself, you start discovering things, and you're like, oh my God, everybody needs to know this, and you want to shove it down their throat kind of thing. But you have to be patient. Everybody comes to it in their own time, and just trickling it in little things is helpful.
Wonderful. And it doesn't happen overnight. I really want to stress that. It's creating that vision from the owner, and although I have to tell you too, because I get to work with the technicians and the receptionists and all that, and they're always like, can we manage up? I'm like, yeah, this is how we're going to do that. We're going to help in that. So there is opportunities in managing up and creating that space for you. And that's the other thing too, is it does begin with you. It does begin with, I'm going to do my practice of meditation. I am going to eat healthy. I am going to come in rejuvenated because I turned all of my clocks off and I turned all of my whistles off. So it's very much an individual choice to make it a team collective choice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I get that question a lot. I'll get managers who are like, but my boss won't buy in, my boss won't do this, or my manager's not part of it. And I say that just what you said, it starts with you, and then you start being the light, and people are attracted to it, and then they want more of it. And then maybe you never get your boss completely on board, but your team is on board, because my partner, he's an old crotchety guy. We love him, but he doesn't do this stuff with us, and we're not going to make him. But the rest of us buy into it, and we're doing it.
Yeah. So we've talked about kind of these things in destigmatization that's working and not working, and we really haven't dived into what's not working. We've got 19 minutes, and I want to allow for time for resources. But is there anybody that really wants to jump in and say, hey, this is not working? What's not working in the destigmatization of, oh, good, Becky Murray.
Yeah.
Good, tell us. Well, you're in it, and you have this vision and perspective that there very few of us have.
Yeah, this is actually the whole reason I popped in tonight. I left work early to do this.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for having it. I have been having, and so thank you, Dr. Krull. You've given me some really good ideas. It's really difficult with such a large group of people as I have. I have almost 300 people, and trying to engage them. I am struggling a whole lot, especially this year, with people who rightly are saying, I am exhausted and burnt out, and I don't know what to do. I mean, we're so sometimes we have 7-hour waits for our emergency room. Yeah, like it's just overwhelming. We're turning exam rooms into more hospitalization space, and so they are rightly, kind of burning out. But in the same way, I cannot get people engaged in doing anything to take care of themselves, right? So it's this constant, I'm struggling. Okay, let's have some groups together. We'll do Zoom groups and we can talk about it. I don't have time for that. Here's a webinar. It's recorded. You could literally sit in your pajamas with a glass of wine and watch it, and nobody's doing it. Okay, let me walk around and talk to you individually and see, what I can do. You can make us less busy, nothing that's like concretely I can do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. And maybe I don't know if this is the right forum for that. But yeah, it's really difficult getting people to engage in any sort of change in their self-care. And a lot of that victimization I was talking about, like, this is because of the pandemic, this is because of our employers, this is because of our clients. And just struggling to get people to say, like, I have something to do with what's going on in my life.
So Jamie and I are talking about our key performance indicators and how creating that, even as a team, even with a team of 300, coming up with something that they choose as their KPIs and tracking that. Dr. Carey might have some suggestions as well, but really saying, okay, guys, are you sleeping and is it good? So Jamie, let's talk about KPIs quickly. What does that look like for you, for your practice, Jamie, when you did your KPIs?
So for me, I tried to focus just on basic like human need and things that kind of everybody could do, because I know self-care and wellness, can look different for everybody, but everybody need things like, drinking enough water and, moving their body and getting enough sleep. So we added some of those things in, and then we did some other, try to make it a little bit more fun and different. And we had a recharge basket where they would get a sticker, which is how we did a reward system, because I have never met a veterinary team member that does not enjoy stickers.
So Dr. Krull is over there shaking her head, and Dr. Carey's shaking their head. So stickers it is.
Yes, stickers, but yeah, office supplies, all those things we love, right? So, but they got a sticker for visiting this recharge basket, which had like coloring books and bubbles and Play-Doh, and they would get credit for taking 5 minutes to just sit down and do something that was, getting their mind off of the busyness, or just having a minute to just, 5 minutes to just recharge. And there was even little cards that had like ideas of things that they could do, of like meditation. And so yeah, so I mean, we focused on things like that. We even had a public group journal where people could just write in the journal positive things that we're grateful for, shout outs to other people. And that was another thing they would get credit for, is, like writing in that journal. And so just finding ways, things that everybody could do. And people definitely were attracted to different things, so you could kind of see. But it made a nice shift for people to see that it wasn't another, because I did it as a challenge in our practice. So it wasn't another like, how many boxes of heartworm prevention can you sell? It is, how many times during the week can you take 5 minutes during your shift paid for yourself to sit down and recharge? Or how many days can you move your body for 30 minutes? That's not work related. Working at the clinic does not count. You have to do something else, take a walk, go to the gym, do yoga, something like that. So, so that was what we did. And my team was amazing guinea pigs. And yeah, so just trying to find things that everybody could do, and especially focusing on those basic needs, because that competitive suffering element is something that bothers me immensely in vet med. It always has. I never understood why we wanted to one up each other about how long it's been since we've used the restroom, or how long it's been since we've eaten, or how,
Competition of suffering.
yes, our competition of suffering. So that's a Rebecca-ism. And I've totally grasped onto that, because as soon as she said it was one of the things, I was like, yes, that's what it's called. That's what we do. So once we got into being competitive about wellness instead, it it was like, oh, how many, did you get your sleep today? And, like people were getting fun and competitive around healthy behaviors instead of the unhealthy ones.
Thank
So.
you, Jamie. All right. So I see Dr. Carey wants to talk. Hopefully, Becky, there was something in there for you. Okay, great. And then I'm going to bring it back to Dr. Krull, and we're going to talk about the WVMA free mental health care. All right. So I'm going to go Dr. Carey and then back to Dr. Krull.
Just a quick idea for Becky Murray. When you're trying to get your team to change habits, it's great to link habits that are already there. So if they're already doing a repetitive activity, can you pair a healthy habit with it? So things and going to Jamie Davis's point, mental health is really constructed on a foundation of physical health. How's your sleep? How's your nutrition? How's your movement? And it doesn't need to be diet and exercise, which are words that make people run screaming from the room, or get really defensive and tell you how impossible it is for them. But movement is something that we all do. We all eat, and and we should all be sleeping. So if you can leverage some of those building blocks, and then also if you can link habits, so add a healthy habit to something that's already happening. Lots of habit folks will use the idea that typically people floss their teeth when they brush. That's a great example of a paired habit. So if you can look around your workplace, and it may be team specific, but like, how can you link a healthy habit with a behavior that's already existing, that they're already doing, and just put that together for folks? Might help decrease some of that defensiveness. Yeah, habit stacking. Thank you, Allison.
Sweet. Yeah, and I'm going to thank everybody for being here today. And we're going to, before we close this off, I'm going to ask for everybody to come on, and we can get a picture of everybody here, because it's been wonderful. All right, Dr. Krull, I'm going to bring it back to you. We're in the home stretch. We've got 10 more minutes, and we need to talk about free mental health care and some of the resources that are available to us for all of this.
Yeah. First of all, I can't give enough hearts and love and all the stars and whatever for what Jamie and Dr. Carey just said. That is, I'm salivating. I'm so excited. So I was really pleased to find out that my own state, the Wisconsin Veterinary Medical Association, they've been, tinkling in this for just a little bit. They finally sent out an email yesterday saying their well-being was up, their program was up, it's available, it's free, which is great, and it's autonomous. So I think that many times people don't want to be known for it. They don't want their name known. They don't want their license to be at risk. They don't want the reputation to be at risk. So the WVMA now has coaching, therapy, resources in Wisconsin.
Cool.
The AVMA has many, many resources. A lot of them are self-started, so you got to yeah. So and then the AVMA does have stuff, but I think you have to be a little bit of a self-starter to get there and do it.
Well, I think that's kind of the message for all of this, is that we have to start here and be that example in order for us to be healthy for our team as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So list out some things that are resources. That's one of the things that Catalyst is always so proud of. There are a lot of resources. And Jamie's been putting a couple things in the chats, and we will place all of these links as well on our symposium recording. All right, so some more resources. The one that we have about the employee assistance program, and Malia is familiar with this as well, and this is all housed on the National Association of Veterinary Technicians as well, and the Veterinary Hospital Managers Association, because we created a series of 4 articles for how to, well, Becky Murray was on this. I believe she was included in this series as well. But what are EAPs? What are employee assistance programs? What are the blocks for people to not use them? How do managers and team leads and veterinarians remind their teams constantly that it's available to them? And more people are having access to EAPs for a number of different reasons. So Dr. Krull, and then I'm going to go down to Becky Murray. Dr. Krull, tell me about your EAP within your practice.
Yeah, within our practice, I mean, it really is that we have obviously all those resources, WVMA, AVMA, but the one we offer, because it works for us, because it worked for me, is we have a coach and her team employed on our team, just employed with us. I contract with her, and she's available to us 24/7 to help us with any and all of our struggles, including coursework that they offer, and then coming in for our continuing education. The concept of an EAP to me was like, what is that? I've never, I didn't know what that was. When I talked with other people, I've never worked in a big corporation. I've never had access to it. So that was foreign to me. So I'm guessing it's foreign to many of our staff. Like, what is that?
I started encouraging and helping practice managers that were taking my VSPN Practice Management 101 class, saying, guys, EAPs need to be created, and having those conversations. So Becky Murray, tell us about your EAP, and then even everybody on this link in the chat, tell me if you have access to an EAP. What does that look like for you? So Becky Murray, tell me what's about your EAP.
Yeah, so we've had an EAP, gosh, I don't know, probably for about 6 or 7 years. I will say the one thing for my staff is they do utilize that EAP. We have about a 35% usage rate, which is amazing. I've talked to the people at the EAP and they're like, that's an incredible number. So the problem is getting them to remember it, right? So they're constantly inundated with so much information. We have it posted everywhere. We have it on our, payroll app. We have it in the break room. We're talking about it at every meeting. But when somebody comes to me individually and says, I'm struggling, and we talk about resources, and I mention the EAP, that, it's always, well, what is that? So, but people have been very, very willing to utilize that. I mean,
and let's remind people too that that you don't know who's using it or for what services.
Yep.
That's the important piece. Is that it's not it's not, I'm into your business as a practice manager, I want to know what you're using it for. No, that's not how that works.
Absolutely, the confidentiality is key. Even when they're coming to me and I'm telling them that as a mental health professional, everything that you're talking about with me is confidential, and the limitations of that, I'm still their coworker, on some level. And so people sometimes struggle with becoming completely vulnerable with me. So I think the idea that they can call somewhere and our hospital has no idea that they called, what they called about, they're literally just getting the number of people that have utilized the service.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
Yeah. So Becky was part of that. Oh, and the other thing that Becky was a part of with the wellbeing task force is she wrote an article, and I've got it printed out here somewhere because I'm going to be using it in my programs, but how to choose a therapist. That's a great article. So during the people that are at the symposium, they'll have access to that as well. Thank you, Becky. All right. Dr. Carey just put a link in there somewhere. Hold on a second. I apologize. TheHappinessTrap.com. There's a great course that's that's not expensive, so it's inexpensive as a resource. There's lots of resources, and we're going to be putting more resources on our page and within the symposium and that as well. So Dr. Krull, we're at 4:27. Any closing remarks? I mean, we're right there.
No, I mean, I'm just so excited you guys are talking about this. I think the more each one of us can just share a little bit of our message, it just snowballs. So we gotta keep doing it. Keep doing it.
Wonderful. So can I have everybody turn on their cameras so we can see beautiful, bright, shining faces, or those in the light of the mirror? And I don't know how to do this, but oh, Linda, I didn't know who Linda was. Hello. But Jamie knows how to capture everybody's picture on here. So once we get a few more faces on here, there they are. Look, all of our faces, and Melissa's in the car. Of course you are. Driving safely. All right.
All right. So, but yeah, there's a couple that have broken cameras, so that's
Sure.
obviously no problem. So
Come on, Belia.
Super. So let's grab a nice picture. Everybody, chest out, smiles up.
All right, ready? Here we go. 3, 2, 1. All right.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Awesome. Dr. Krull, we appreciate you helping us with this. Dr. Carey, Becky, is there anyone else that has any pressing questions that they might want to bring forth in this regard of destigmatization, the biggest word I ever heard?
I just always like to tell people that it's just one baby step at a time. So these programs, making these things happen, they don't happen overnight. They don't happen in weeks or months. I mean, they do take some time, but if you are taking baby steps all the time to get to that vision that you have for your team and mental health and well-being, then you'll get there. You just keep plugging away at it, and it is so worth it. I've never done anything in my career that's been more worth it than taking those steps. And to see other leaders that are doing this is so exciting to me, because I searched my entire 20 plus years in clinics to try and find a facility that was ready to do what I wanted to do for myself and for my team. So keep at it. You can totally do it. And it's all about the baby steps.
All about the baby steps. All right. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to turn this off. All right. We appreciate everybody being here. Continue to engage, continuing to ask questions, and continue to reach out to us. I'm going to stop it here without